don't even know how to start this. um, well, let's start from the beginning. As you know, my husband and I moved to Pennsylvania in September, and everything was going real nice, getting used to the seasons and the people and the environment, things like that. And then probably when it started to finally get warm out here, I noticed that my allergies were completely different than what they were when I was living in California. And I've talked to everybody, and they all said the same thing, that Pennsylvania allergies are no joke. And they prescribed the steroid that's called prednisone, and they told me that if I took that, it would take the swelling down, the vertigo would go away. They also gave me some stuff for the vertigo, and we were pretty much golden. And that was around the time, probably in the beginning of June. I mean, we were just about to get on a flight to LA to go see my family and stuff, but I was miserable for that entire week. But as soon as I took the medicine, everything went away. There was no problem. I felt great. Like the fluid left, the vertigo left. Like it was still a little bit of dizziness, but I was getting my energy back. I was finally getting my appetite back. Everything was good. And it was like that for a whole month. Like the whole month of June, I was pretty much set. And then right around the end of June going into, July, the symptoms came back. It was very slow, but it was starting to come back. So in our head, Neil and I thought, well, if they said it was allergies, let's treat it like allergies. So we went down to a local CVS, Rite Aid, or anything like that was really close, and we bought everything. We bought Benadryl, we bought Claritin, we bought nasal sprays, and obviously this wasn't like all at once. It was kind of like collectively trying to figure out what is the best possible way that we could treat the allergies. So we started with just the typical take Claritin in the morning, maybe do a nasal spray, and we'll go from there. And they have steroids in the nasal spray. I think it was Flonase or something like that. And it seemed like it was okay. Like it was able to get rid of some of the symptoms, and I was able to function and go to work, and there was nothing really happening, but I noticed that I wasn't getting better. It was just kind of delaying everything. And this, again, now it's like July 4th at this point. And then I noticed that my appetite was kind of changing at this point. I wasn't really eating that much because I couldn't really keep anything down. I wasn't throwing up, but I was definitely just feeling nauseous all the time. And then I just thought it was just because of my ears clogging up. And then at that point we were trying to do double doses, kind of, where we were just kind of trying to figure out what we could put together to make this kind of like this allergy cocktail to get rid of the congestion, because it was starting to fill up into my face. It was starting to fill up into my ears. It was so bad to the point where sometimes I couldn't even hear what was happening around me. It was so strange. And it just kept getting worse every day. At one point I couldn't even take pills at all. I couldn't take any type of Advil. I couldn't take the Claritin. I couldn't take anything. All I was able to do was do the nasal sprays. At this point, it's halfway through July. And I felt awful. I started to have a fever, and it just wasn't getting better. And we just didn't know why. And we just figured that it was just because the weather it was just getting so hot out here, that maybe that was what was taking it, because I was trying to drink water, and I just felt so dehydrated and slow and sluggish. And then at one point, I was at work, and anytime I tried to take anything or eat anything, it would just come right back out. It just wouldn't stay in my body. And finally I even had to call out at one point, and that was a struggle, which it was just rough, because at the time I was trying to go for a promotion, and I was trying to go and trying to get full-time benefits, doing that whole thing, and I just didn't want to miss work. I couldn't do it. It was driving me crazy, and I just wanted to just keep pushing. And even though everyone was telling me you should stay home, Neil was telling me you need to just relax, you have a fever, you should just stop, just wait. And I just said, no, I have to, because I'm in the middle of this thing. I really want to impress my boss. There was just so much pressure that I completely ignored my health at the time, and I completely regret it. pretty much one day after I called out, I said enough is enough. Like I can't function anymore. I have to take the whole week off. And that killed me because again, I was in the middle of like auditioning for this next role that was a full-time role, it was a producer role, and I wanted it so bad. And it sucked calling out. And I hate that that's kind of like where society has kind of put us, where I feel like I know friends in LA, here, New York, wherever, like anyone I can talk to that's my age or a little bit older or even a little bit younger, where they'll put their health on the back burner because, well, it doesn't matter because you're just, you know, either A, you don't have the money to take yourself to a doctor, or you're so busy that you don't even have time to even think about like, oh, well, I'll just, you know, I want to go get a checkup, or I want to, oh man, I've got the flu, I'll just find something, you know, through CVS or something. And we've all done that. Or they just go to an urgent care because it's cheap. And that's what we did. But I just felt like it, I mean, at the time, it felt like it was enough. I felt like if I just continued with what we were doing, it'll just get better. I just needed to rest. I needed to sleep or something. And it just didn't. It got collectively worse. I couldn't get out of bed unless I had to use the bathroom or throw up. And pretty much it was to the point where Neil had to like help me because I couldn't walk. And I didn't have the strength to sit up sometimes. I was mostly laying down for weeks and weeks. Finally, towards the end, I remember just thinking that something wasn't right. Because at this point now, I couldn't take any solid food at all, completely. It got to the point where I just couldn't take any type of solid food whatsoever. We tried everything. We even bought a blender just so that we can make smoothies, just so I can have some sort of nutrition. Because I couldn't even eat toast. Like even toast was starting to make me throw up. And then pretty much, I think after 4 days of doing like a liquid diet, pretty much was ice chips, smoothies, and Gatorade. Pretty much at that point, I couldn't do anything at all. The day that we got admitted into the hospital, I remember waking up and I was feeling so hot because it was probably one of the warmest days that I can remember. And I felt so sweaty and tired, and I felt like I couldn't really breathe. And I remember telling Neil, I was like, I just want something to just like, you know, because I didn't want to drink water. I just wanted to just have something in my mouth. So I asked him to get me like a cup of ice chips. So he goes and he comes back. I literally take maybe 2 or 3 scoops of ice, and immediately I have to throw up. It's just like, I was probably the most strength I've ever had the entire week that I was in bed, and just like crawled/ran my way over to the bathroom and just threw up. And I noticed that there was something wrong because usually bile's like, sorry if it's gross, bile is usually like a yellow or a light green or an orange, and mine was so dark that you couldn't see the bottom of the toilet bowl. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And so at that point, you know, my husband and I were just like, we have to go. We have to go see somebody. You need to go see somebody. We can't do this anymore. We've been trying to do it at home. It's stupid. Let's go. And so while he's packing up and doing everything, I'm just sitting there on the bathroom floor, just like, I can't get up. Because if I moved, I threw up. If I stood up, I threw up. Even when I like got up and had enough energy to walk back to the bed while he was still packing, that was still enough. I laid down, I immediately was like, oh, I have to throw up again. I think I threw up like 4 or 5 times that day, and it was all the same stuff. And I didn't have anything in my system. I had nothing. So at that point, we assume that it was like probably like bile and blood at that point. It was awful. So now it was time to try to get out of the house. Mind you, I haven't left the house in like 2 weeks. Like I haven't moved from the bedroom, living room, or bathroom, and again, without help. So we live on the 3rd floor of our apartment. So there's a bunch of stairs to get up and down. There's no elevator, and because it's a very old building. And it took us, we have a little tiny stairwell, for just our apartment alone, just to get up to it. And it took us about 45 minutes to get down just those set of stairs. We didn't even get into the hallway, like the stairwell. Like we weren't even past our apartment front door. And it took us that long because I had to literally scoot my way per step. It was really rough. And again, I haven't been able to walk in a while. So it was like I couldn't stand and like walk down. We had a cane and everything. Finally, now it was time to get down to like the actual stairwell. Mind you, Pennsylvania has a lot of very old buildings, so there was no windows, there's no airflow coming through, and we were the only people technically living in the apartment at the time. So it's not like any of our neighbors could come and like help us or anything like that. So we start tackling these stairs, and the entire time I'm thinking, I could just go back to bed. We could just crawl back up. I can't do it. I can't. I have no energy. I'm so tired. My mouth was so dry, and even with my husband giving me water and Gatorade and these things, it wasn't really working. I just felt sick. And it's not like my husband could like throw me over his shoulder and just like run down the stairs, because anytime I moved, I pretty much wanted to just completely barf my entire insides out. So we took it one by one, the stairs, and it took us a total, with the stairs in our apartment, 2 hours to get down the stairs. 2 hours. And this is with stopping, drinking, taking deep breaths, things like that. But again, it was getting hotter as the day progressed. Finally, we get to the end of the stairs, and that was it. I couldn't do it anymore. I completely just fell over in the front of the building. And my husband had to get a chair and like prop me up because I couldn't physically my muscles like wouldn't let me sit up anymore. And from what, I couldn't see my face. I haven't seen my face in 2 weeks at that time, but pretty much my husband said that I was just paler than pale. I was a little, I had dark circles completely around my eyes, and I was just, like my eyes were just rolling back. And that was when he knew that he's like, okay, this is a lot more serious, but I also want to just get you out of the house because the house is hot and we need to get out. So we were trying to like discuss, not argue, but discuss like what's the best way / not a way to get into an ambulance and drive off. And that was the other thing that drove me crazy, was that again, we're in this terrible mindset because the fact that our economy is so crappy and how much we get paid and all these kind of things, that we were trying every way to cut corners because we knew that we couldn't afford getting into an ambulance and having them drive me to the hospital. It drove me nuts thinking about it now, but at the time I was just like, oh, I don't care. Because at this point I wanted to just go back to bed. I didn't even want to go anywhere at this point. So in our brain we were thinking, because again, we were still thinking this was allergies, that if they just give me fluids and treat me at the apartment or in, the area that we were in, that I would feel well enough to get in a car, drive to urgent care, and take care of it there, because that's what we had. I worked part-time, and I didn't have insurance. So I thought this was the best way to do it. So we called. The EMT showed up, took a half look at me, not even one look, and went, I can't tell you what to do here because it's totally up to you and it's not my place. But as a medical professional, I want to take her to the hospital, period. That is what I want to do, because she's dehydrated and it's awful, like the way that she looks and everything. I want to take her in. And my husband's like, well, I'm not going to fight you on it, so go ahead, take her. And that's what we did. We went to the ER. They admitted me. Neil was figuring out some other stuff at the time. They come in and they pretty much told me that I was dehydrated. I had jaundice, where I had the yellow in my eyes. I was, delirious. It was bad. So they obviously wanted to give me fluids right away, take some blood samples to see what was going on, and go from there. So that was pretty much it. We didn't really hear anything. They wanted to do some scans and stuff at some point, but they mostly just wanted to assess like why I looked so awful. When the doctor came back after taking some blood, he noticed that my blood level, or my hemoglobin level, was low. And I don't mean like a normal low, like an extreme low. So he told us that an average female is anywhere between probably 15 to 17 blood level or hemoglobin level. Hospitals transfuse at 7. When they took my blood, they found out that I was at a 3.3. That was the lowest that he's ever seen, and pretty much for the rest of this hospital visit, every single person, doctor, nurse, anybody, pretty much was like, that's the lowest I've ever seen in my entire medical professional life, period. Except for one doctor who was the head of hematology, the actual blood doctor, who said he saw a 2, but that person was dying. So I found out that if we decided to go with our original plan and stay at home and or just go to an urgent care, I might not be here today because I wanted to cut corners because we didn't have money. Or we had money, but it's like, it wasn't enough. And that put me in a full shock. Even though I was still delusional and everything, I knew that I was like, oh, this is not good. So they cut me off of fluids immediately because my blood was so thin that if they gave me fluids, it would just make it thinner. And I would be even at more risk than I was at the time. They were like, we need to order her a blood transfusion immediately, so we're gonna work on that. She needs to stay here, and we're gonna work on that. We're gonna find out why her blood level is so low, and we'll go from there. And pretty much, I couldn't do anything. My heart was beating so fast that when I was resting, like laying down in the hospital bed, my heart rate was at a 135, resting. And when they had to come in to sit me up for any reason, we had to do a chest x-ray, all this kind of stuff. They sat me up and it shot up to 152, just out of nowhere. And all I was doing was sitting up. And that's when the doctors were like, okay, we can't move her. We're gonna let her rest for a little bit and we'll go from there. But they also needed me to do a bunch of tests. So that was the thing, because they needed to know why this was happening. So at that point, I had to do a CT scan. They ordered an ultrasound. They had the chest x-ray, which was clear, thank goodness, and mostly just trying to get a room so I can go up there and they can start giving me blood. While we were waiting, at this point, I was so dehydrated. I was just dying because they couldn't give me fluids, so I was just sitting there, waiting and waiting and waiting until they were able to bring us to the room and go through the whole motions of things. To the point where they were just like dabbing me with a sponge on my lips just so I wouldn't feel dry, but obviously it wasn't really enough. But during our waiting, we found out that it looked like my antibodies in my body were destroying my red blood cells. That was why my blood level was so low. But they needed to know why, so they had to do more tests. So they took more blood, and they said that the blood that they ordered, which was 3 bags of blood, they had to return because they needed to get special blood to put into me because they were scared that if they got my normal A positive blood, it wouldn't have made sense because my antibodies would have just destroyed those as well. So they had to make like some sort of concoction to give me. So at that point, that's when they tried to move me, since I was feeling a little bit more stable at this point. So then they finally moved me into the room, which was super nice. I was not expecting it to look so nice. This hospital was just on point and really helpful, and they were fantastic. The staff was fantastic. The doctors were great, and it just felt good to be taken care of, and that was awesome. So they moved me up to the room. They ordered the first bag of blood, and they pretty much get it moving because that was the main order of business. So after they strapped me up with the first bag, the doctor said that they're going to be doing routine tests every time that they put blood in. They're going to have to take a little bit out just to make sure that it's working, and also to make sure that the levels are actually going higher. So that was pretty much all we were worried about at the time, mostly just trying to figure out why my body was destroying my red blood cells. That was it. And then all of a sudden, OBGYN came in halfway through. I think we were on bag 2 maybe at that point. Again, this is all in the first night. It hasn't even been like the end of the night yet. The OBGYN department came in, and they said that, because I already had a CT scan and an ultrasound, that they said that they saw something in the CT scan. They couldn't see it very well, hence why they ordered an ultrasound, took an ultrasound, and still couldn't see very well, but there was definitely something there that they wanted to see in my pelvic area. And since they were already going to be taking an MRI of my spleen because of what was happening with my blood, they thought that they could just attach onto that and kind of sit there and go, we just want to see your spleen and the rest of your pelvic area. And we figured, oh, we're here, so sure. And they said it could be nothing, it could be something. We just wanted to check because we thought you can't see it very clearly, but it looks like there might be something there. So it looked like they were trying to be nice and try not to scare me, but it also seemed like something that maybe, we should check out. And I was like, well, like I said, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, so let's go for it. So that night, obviously, it was the first night. Sadly enough, I was in the hematology floor, so we couldn't have overnight guests. So Neil couldn't stay with me, or my husband couldn't stay with me, which was really nerve-wracking, but it's fine. I found out people mostly don't sleep in hospitals because they're always checking up on you or doing tests or things like that. So it wasn't too bad. I was definitely had some company for most of the night. So the next day, I'm waiting to go see the MRI, and I go get I go down there, and they take just my spleen. Even though I told them that OBGYN wanted the rest of the pelvic area, they said, well, we don't have the ticket for that or the request for that, so we're just going to do your spleen. And I was like, well, okay. So of course they send me back up. Again, we're still transfusing at this point. We're on bag 3 now, and at this point we're probably right around a 5.8 ish. Still not passable. I need to be at a 7. But I was feeling so much better. I was able to eat food. I was able to keep liquids down. I was feeling on top of the world, and I was at a 5.8. I wasn't even at a passable 7, which is where they start transfusing. So that was hilarious. Neil's getting so upset because I was standing up and walking around and things, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I feel great," And he's like, "Yeah, you're at." I even had a band on my wrist that says fall risk, because the fact that I could literally fall at any moment, but I was just like, I feel so great, I feel so light on my feet and all this kind of stuff. It was insane. We got to meet pretty much kind of not the head of hematology, but pretty much he was just another doctor there that was kind of I think he's the head attending or something like that. And he came in and he was telling us about our case, and they finally had a diagnosis, which was great. I thought that we were gonna have to wait several days to figure that out, so I'm really glad that they were able to figure out what I had, pretty much, with the low blood count. So he came in and he pretty much told us that I have a type of an autoimmune response that my body has that's called hemolytic anemia, where pretty much my body, my immune system, is killing or destroying my red blood cells for no apparent reason. They just think that there's something wrong with them and is just slowly destroying them. No idea why. So the whole point of that and how to treat that is pretty much through steroids, and that's what I'm on now. I'm on a pretty high dosage for at least a person my age, or maybe anybody, I'm not quite sure, of steroids. And then what they do is I pretty much have to do that for a whole month, maybe even 2, and then they start to taper the dosage as I go on. Right now, because I'm in the early stages and they're trying to treat it and trying to get rid of it, well, not rid of it, but trying to have a good handle on it, that there are 2 options. Either they taper and they see how it goes. If my body starts to normalize out and kind of work its way through all of this stuff and stops destroying my red blood cells, they can either take me off the medicine for good. But if it doesn't go that way, and this is hemolytic anemia, if it ends up staying like this and it becomes permanent, they would either be on a low dosage of steroids for the rest of my life, or they have to take my spleen out. Yay, surgery! So that was interesting to find out on day 2, but They also told me, they at least reassured me that if I took my spleen out, there are several people in this world who don't have their spleen and they're completely fine. So it's not the end of the world, at least on that part, if they did decide to take out my spleen, but they didn't even think of the idea because I'm so young. And they pretty much sat there, were like, we're just gonna work with the steroids for now. So that's kind of where most of my money and my time is going to, is into just really, I have to take blood tests pretty much every week, maybe even like every few months or so, and it's just gonna be a constant thing until I am at a good level. And then again, taking the steroids every day, and then just seeing what happens. That was just kind of the plan at the time. And we were like, great, I guess this is what we have to do. And again, it's just a lot of uncertainty thrown in the air at the time. But at least it made me feel good. Actually, it made us both feel good that we finally realized, like, okay, this is what we're dealing with. This could be a type of anemia. And it's not the type of anemia that you're thinking like, ooh, it has to do with your iron. You have to take like iron supplements and stuff. It's a completely different type of anemia that has nothing to do with my iron. Hence why I'm not doing that. Hence why I'm using the steroids instead of this. And they're just constantly checking my spleen, because I think when they looked at the MRI, there was like a little bit of dead tissue, like right in the middle. And they were like, that might be a bad sign, but again, it's not really doing anything, so we're just keeping an eye on it. So that was pretty much where we were at until, we had to do more tests. So it was just crazy. But after that, OBGYN came back up later that evening and went, so the MRI, we didn't get it. What's up with that? And I was like, that was not my fault. That was the MRI technician. She said she didn't get a request from you guys to get the pelvic area. So they only got my spleen. And he goes, do you mind doing that again tomorrow? And I went, I mean, sure, I guess if we're paying for it, why not? And it was really frustrating at the time, but it's whatever. But the thing is, they were like, well, since we have to wait till tomorrow, we might do a pelvic exam. So I said, that's fine. Just let me know when you're ready. He came in, and she did the pelvic exam. Mind you, sorry men in the room who probably have no idea what I'm talking about if you're watching this, but the women, my ladies, you know how pelvic exams work. They're not great, but they're usually not awful, but they're always not great. When this lady came in to do this pelvic exam, a simple, routine pelvic exam that like I said, I've done it most of my life, this pelvic exam hurt so much that I was just screaming in pain, screaming. Neil's in the room with me, and he looked like he said the doctor's face, because I couldn't open my eyes. My eyes were shut, and like I was clenching. I was in so much pain that the doctor looked horrified. She wasn't even pressing that hard. She was just going along just the top of everything. And it felt like she was just ripping me in half, and she wasn't doing anything. And I knew right then and there that either A, she is way too rough, or something's wrong. But I obviously pushed that something wrong way, way out of my mind. But she goes, does this happen all the time when you go? And I went, no, this is the first time that's happened. That was awful. Please get out. Just stop touching me. Just get off, get out. I don't want it. Just go. And she left. And she said, I guess we'll look at the MRI tomorrow. I was livid. I was like, what was that? And of course, like, it's awful to think about, because the fact that, again, I've been doing this my entire adult life, getting pap smears, getting all that kind of stuff. But man, that one was the worst I've ever had in my entire life. It was just I was so angry. And I wasn't mad at her. At the time I probably was. But man, oh man, I was just like, what the hell was that? Like, I was just like ranting. And the pain was still there. It lasted the entire night, to the point where I had to ask the nurse to give me something, because I couldn't sleep. Even though I wasn't going to sleep anyway, I couldn't sit comfortably because it was just so painful. I was crying. It was bad. I mean, obviously it didn't help that I was like on a bedpan and like had me in this weird angle, but I was just livid. I was just like, I don't understand what what just happened. I never want to go through that again. Well, I found out why it was so painful. So the next day, I do my MRI, I go through the whole thing again. I come back up, and my husband and his sisters are there just keeping me company, and we're all talking and everything. And at this point now, Neil, because of the fact that he can't sleep over, he'd go home, take care of our dogs, sleep there, and then come back in the morning. So this was around that time. It's around 4 o'clock now. I usually have dinner. He has dinner and then comes back, hangs out with me until it's time to leave, until visitation hours are over. So his sisters wanted to stay with me, so I had company. They were in the middle of giving me, I think, another bag of blood at this point, probably my 4th bag now. And they were going to stop there. So they wanted to see how I was going to do. Mind you now, I've been in the hospital for about 3 days at this point. After they do that and they leave, a guy comes in and says that he's a I'm going to just say gyno-oncologist because I don't know the full term. It's a very long, very wordy term, but a gyno-oncologist. That's how he introduced himself. If you don't know what oncology is, I'm just going to let you Google that. But most of the time, everybody knows it has to deal with cancer. So when you put 2 and 2 together, I was in pain yesterday from a regular pelvic exam. They saw something in an ultrasound that they couldn't see, and they needed an MRI to see it clearly. And now I'm meeting with a guy who is like the professional or the like dude that you would talk to for any type of gyno-oncology problem. I already knew that this was not going to be good. That was strike 1. Strike 2 was when he goes, "Hey, you're the California girl with the interesting case." That was strike 2. And I went, "Oh, Alexis, what did you do?" And obviously, I didn't do anything, but it was enough to make me go, something is just not right. He comes in, tells us his name, what he's here for, all this kind of stuff. And he goes, "I have your MRI results." And he shows me the MRI results. Now, at this point, I pretty much just completely just blacked out after he said these words. He said, "We found a 4-inch in diameter cystic mass in your uterus. It's on your ovaries." Now, if you don't know what 4 inches looks like, you'll see the pictures in a second. It's huge. In my brain, I'm thinking 4 centimeters or something. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't realize how big it was until he showed the picture, to the point where it's pressing on my bladder. Oh my God. And then he said there's another cyst on your other ovary. It's not as big, but it's there. We don't know if it's cancerous. We need to take a look. And as soon as he said cancerous, I pretty much just completely tuned him out. Completely shut him out. Just didn't even hear the rest of it. Luckily, again, if I was in there by myself, I don't know what I would have done. I pretty much wouldn't have heard a single thing he said. Luckily, my in-laws were there, my sisters. They were there, and they literally just saw my face, saw that I completely checked out, and just recorded everything, asked questions, the whole entire thing. At that point, it was just a Charlie Brown. I couldn't hear anything, whatever. They also said I had 5 fibroids that were sitting on the outside of my uterus. Luckily, they weren't on the inside, because if that was the case, I would be in a totally different spot right now. And they're just as big. They're huge. And he's like, so obviously, the only thing I heard was, obviously we need to do surgery. I'll have to do major surgery, do a full cut open and take a look because I can't tell if they're cancerous until blah, blah, blah. Like he was just spouting up stuff. And all I was thinking was, if I have cancer, if I have ovarian cancer, what am I going to do? I'm 28. How did I not see this? I didn't even know how to even handle all that kind of stuff. But again, it was also just a bunch of stuff that was up in the air, besides the fact that he knew that we had to get that giant guy out of there, the 4-inch one, because it was too big. It shouldn't be there. And he goes, there's options. We can see if we can try to save eggs. We can do, he went through all the options at the time. But again, I wasn't really listening. I was kind of just in the moment. He gave me a hug. He gave me his card and told me to call him as soon as I got discharged. to talk, have a consultation so we can have a plan. And he left. Mind you, again, I also just started eating solid food. So at the time he was explaining everything, somebody brought in my dinner. So after he left, like walked right out the door, I opened up my dinner and started cutting it up. My sister-in-laws were just sitting there like, Alexis, do you want to talk about what we just heard? And this was the moment where I knew that that was it, where I was literally crying because all I wanted to do was eat the spaghetti and meatballs because it was in front of me and I haven't eaten all day. That was so silly. We pretty much called Neil back. He was only gone. He left like 10 minutes before the doctor got there. So I felt really bad that he probably just got home, just dealt with Rocky, all that kind of stuff. But I pretty much was like, we have to call him back because he needs to hear this news because it's not just me that's going through this, it's him too. Neil showed up. His sisters really tried hard to explain it to him, and they did a really good job, but it wasn't the same. So Neil called the doctor on his cell phone and asked him if he can go through it again because he missed it. And he did. He gave him the full rundown over the phone. Neil took notes, all this kind of stuff. And then we had to have a discussion because we were in the midst of dealing with the fact that depending on what's going on in there, besides the fact that we know that there's masses in there and the fibroids and stuff, that there was a potential that I just wasn't going to have kids. We weren't going to have kids. And you know what the saddest thing was? The first thing that crossed my mind was, oh my God, I have to tell my parents that they're never going to get grandchildren from me. Mind you, they can still get grandchildren now with whatever decision that I made, but at the time, that was the first thing I thought of. I didn't think about my health. I didn't think about my body and what it would do. That was the only thing on my mind, was that I'm never going to give my parents grandchildren from me. And it sucked. It sucked so hard that I would have to tell, or my grandparents, because both my grandparents are still alive, and that they're never going to have great-grandchildren from me. Obviously, I have brothers. They could figure that out. But that was literally the first thing. It's the one thing that you hear when you get married. Like the first thing. When are you guys having kids? When are you guys going to have kids? When are you guys thinking about it? And that's all I could think of the entire fucking time, instead of thinking about what it's doing to me, was that, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to experience pregnancy. And society's going to not redeem me, but ridicule me for it. It's awful. So his sisters let us have the room for a little bit. We talked about our options. But it wasn't really options. It was more along the lines of just dealing with the news that we had it, and then just freaking updating everybody. We told our close friends who knew I was in the hospital at the time. Neil had to break the news to my parents because I couldn't do it. I wanted to so bad. I couldn't fucking do it. I was too scared. Because again, I was just thinking, oh my God, they have a daughter who can't produce children. How awful. I'm ashamed. I can't talk to you. And he had to tell it twice. Because, I think when we got the news, it was 6 p.m. our time. And that means it was 3 o'clock LA time, Pacific time. And my parents were at work.
What a terrible way to tell them in the middle of their day or as they're about to go home. It was surreal. And the worst part was there was no overnight guests. So at 9 p.m., Neil had to leave, and his sisters. So I was alone in the hospital, just figuring it out. The nurses were so nice, though. They were like, okay, so if you want, obviously we're going to leave you alone today. Usually they were coming in every 2 to 3 hours to take blood to make sure everything was okay. But at this point, I was on my 4th bag. I already finished, and they just wanted to see how my body would just handle it. I was at a good level. I think I was at an 8 at this time, which is above the 7, which is great, which is what they were trying to aim for. And they were just like, here's something to help you sleep. I didn't sleep. Or at least to help your body relax. And if you need anything, let us know. And they left me alone from 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. Pardon me. Which is rare because they're usually in there at like 2, 3, and then 4, and then the rest of the day. And when they left, they shut the lights off, and I was just alone in a dark room by myself dealing with it. And I went through everything. I went through everything that you can imagine off the top of my head. I went through blaming myself. I went through the crying. I went through the anger. I went through the frustration. And again, it was just like all these topics that were just like, that just weren't important at the time, or they were important to me at the time, but now that I look back on it, it wasn't important. Obviously, there's options. They gave us options. They told us. I just wasn't listening at the time. But the whole point was, if the other ovary, the one that wasn't as big, was clean enough, like the mass wasn't disturbing the eggs or disturbing the ovarian tissue, if it's just sitting on top of it and the eggs can be saved, there you go. Check that off. Great. We can use that, get a surrogate, whatever. But if it's not, we'll just take the whole thing out. That was where we were at the time. But again, to get there, it took quite a bit. Like I said, I sat there and I said, this is what I get. I should have gone to a gyno more often. I should have done this. I should have done that. So there was a lot of should-haves in the beginning and going, God, you're so stupid. Like, why wouldn't you put your health first? Why wouldn't you do this, do that? But again, it was me ranting about the fact that I just didn't have time. I know my mom told me to do this stuff and friends and things like that. But I also know there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of women or just people in general who just don't go. You don't go to the dentist or a specialty doctor that often. Some people do. They'll take a whole day and just hit up all their doctors all at once. And I think that's admirable because I didn't do that. And again, I cut corners like an idiot, because I worked part-time. I didn't have benefits. So I tried everything in my power to figure things out on my own. Our generation of Googling crap and stuff. It was just what we did. I mean, it's funny because in February, I even went to a Planned Parenthood because at the time, my husband and I were trying to have kids in January. Start of the new year, that was our New Year's resolution, that we were ready to have kids and we were going to start trying. We obviously didn't tell anybody because we wanted it to be a surprise, especially for my parents. And so I went because I noticed that my periods changed. It wasn't a big deal. I figured that because of all the multivitamins and my diet change and everything, that eventually we would have to, it was going to happen. So, but I noticed that before, my periods were very, very heavy, they were painful, the usual stuff. And my mom's anemic, all this other kind of stuff was happening. So I figured, I should probably get checked. So, because again, I'm part-time, I went to a Planned Parenthood because it was free. I went there and I filled out a questionnaire. I talked to a nurse. We went through all of my symptoms and everything. I even did a pelvic exam, and the pelvic exam was fine. I wasn't in any pain. I was in discomfort, which is what you would get from a normal pelvic exam. And she said I was fine, sent me home. She just said it makes sense that your period's probably changing, just keep an eye on it. Because it went from being a heavy period for like 4 or 5 days to 1, and then just spotting or nothing after, which was weird, at least to me. But when she said it was okay, I went home. I went home and just kept an eye on it, kind of. I mean, I was just like, okay, I guess this is just my period, which is what I also was upset about when I found out about the news, because I had no idea that this was happening, especially if it's 4 inches in diameter. It's probably been there for quite some time, is my assumption, and also what the doctor said. But he also can't tell how long it's been there because he doesn't know. And there was no signs. I mean, the period could have been a sign, but I wouldn't know because society tells us, oh, your periods suck. They're going to hurt. They're going to be a problem. You're just going to have to deal with it. And I've gone to an ER before for this. I remember going because I was having a really, really bad, like, anemic episode where I felt like I was, like, getting the spins and I was, like, pale and shaky. And I went to an ER in California, in LA. And they told me that, oh, your iron's low. Go home. Take iron supplements. And that was it. I waited 4 hours, saw me for 20 minutes, and I got an $800 bill for that. That's not going to make me want to go again, hence why all this stuff was happening. It drove me nuts the entire night that I was there by myself listening to, like, all of these strong women at the time, like Halsey and, like, I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head right now. She was the only one that, like, really stuck out. But, like, stuff like that, Jessie J, there you go, like, things like that, where I was, like, trying to, like, empower myself, like, really think this through, Alexis. This is a really big fucking decision that you need to make right now. And all I could think about was how society was going to treat me if I took my entire uterus out. Like, that was all I was thinking about. And it just sucks, that I feel ashamed that I can't do this thing. I have beautiful, beautiful female friends that are all going to have babies within the next, like, few months right now. And I can't even look them in the eye. I can't look at their posts. I can't do anything right now because I feel ashamed that I'm going to miss out on that I won't be able to get to do that. And I hate that society makes me feel that way. I hate that I see it on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook and I even get ads. I mean, it's not technically their fault because Neil and I were trying. That was the whole point. But it was just constantly in my face, and the fact that, like, now I get this news that I'm not going to be able to do it. And again, I love all my friends. I love all of them and my family and everything like that. But there's also that weird pressure where they were like, are you sure you want to do this, though? Are you sure you don't want to just, like, clean house and then just leave the uterus there and just try for it? But after talking to the doctor where he said the fibroids are definitely going to grow back the same size, because he was already shocked how big they were for how young I was, because they, like I said, if you saw the picture, they were huge, that they're definitely going to grow back. We don't know about the masses because obviously the ovaries would be gone. I mean, I don't know. And we could do the type of, like, egg transplant kind of thing into the actual uterus and go from there. But after, when I finally got through being blamed, like, or blaming myself or going through the shameful crap that I was doing to my body, and I finally hit that weird wall of clarity, I went, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to risk my health just because I want to experience what pregnancy feels like. It seems kind of dumb. I know that sounds weird to probably a lot of people. I don't want it. I don't want to think about the what if, let's say we try that, and the fibroids grow back halfway through the pregnancy, or the beginning, or they might not grow back in that time frame at all, but just thinking about it and stressing about it I don't even want to know what it would do to my mental health, which is already fragile at this point, and it's going to get worse when it gets closer to the surgery. I also thought, okay, they have to cut me open just to look at everything. Now, if I have to do this again, they're probably going to have to cut me open again for that. And I don't want to go through this twice. And it was crazy. It was the clearest moment. Again, this is at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning in the hospital of not sleeping at all. And it was so, like, this weight, like, just kind of flew off my shoulders. It was nuts how clear it was. And I went, this is the first big, like, really big decision. Obviously, it was a big decision to get married. It was a big decision to move all the way across the fucking country. Sure. You know, also, sorry, Grandma, I'm cursing a lot, if you see this. But I finally knew that this was something I really wanted to do. I didn't care what society thought. I didn't care what other women thought, or men. I just knew that this is what I wanted for me. I wanted to be alive. And again, there are other options. The surrogate was one if the eggs are fine. Or we adopt, which is totally fine. I have a beautiful stepdad who takes good care of me. He's taken great care of me. He raised me. And it doesn't make him less of a dad because he's not my dad. So I should be allowed to be a mom and be treated as such. Because whatever kid I adopt or whatever would still make me a good mom, because that was the biggest problem. I thought when I first got this news, I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna be a mom. I'm never gonna be able to experience being a mom, because I was like 9 years old and I like wanted to be a mom. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I was like, I don't need a career. I just want to have millions of babies and just do that. That's what I wanted to do. And that's why when we got married, I was like, all right, when are we going to do this? I'm ready. That's why we moved all the way out here. Give me the babies, you know, which sounds ridiculous. And I know that there are plenty of my friends who are like, ew, gross. And I totally get that. That's fine. But I also like that I have that option now when I take it out. Is that if, let's say, my husband and I just decided, oh, you know what? We're not going to have children right away. We'll travel. We'll explore. We'll do more things, just the two of us and our dog, Rocky. And maybe another dog because I want one, you know, or something. I have the option to now. I don't have to have that stupid societal biological clock going, up, you're almost 30. You're going to have to pop out them kids, you know. Got to do it soon. Got to do it quick. And it felt so good not having to deal with that, not having to worry about, like, okay, if we beat this clock, if we do this before the fibroids show up, we'll be golden. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to go through that. Again, it still sucks. It really does that I don't get to actually know the feeling of somebody like touching my belly and knowing that I'm growing a person inside me, which I always thought was the coolest thing a woman could ever do when I was young. I just thought that was just like, yeah, no one can freaking do that. Women do that all the time. Just growing people in their bodies. That's so cool, you know? And it sucks. I mean, I'm definitely not going to lie that it definitely creeps up on me on days, and it really hits my depression in a way that I've never dealt with before. I can usually handle it, but this is probably something that I'm definitely not ready for, mentally wise. But I know that my decision to take out my reproductive organs just so I can live a longer life and a healthier life, I'll take it any day. And it was just crazy figuring that out again, all by myself, listening to like Halsey Nightmare. Like, you know, it was a weird moment, but it felt good. And it's something that I also wanted to just tell people, was that society sucks in telling what women should do with their reproductive organs. We're dealing with it now, all the time. And I hate it. But I'm also proud that I actually took control of something. And I know there's going to be hurdles. I know there's going to be people, which it's already happened before, where they're like, don't you want to get a second opinion? Don't you want to go find a different doctor? Because it seemed like he was really hasty because he wanted to like cut you open. And I love that they care. I loved that because it's something that I would never think of. But also at the same time, I'm not budging. on this. I'm just not. And society can kiss my ass on that one. I will totally be an advocate for that because it's not fair. I don't have to experience growing a child inside of me to feel like a woman or feel like a mom. And I don't plan to. And that's what I learned the most from this entire experience. Now we're just in this weird phase of waiting. Because of everything that's going on, they need to make sure that my body is stable for this surgery. This is definitely going to be extremely major. Not life-threatening, but it's still a major surgery where I'm going to be under the knife for a while. So the main goal right now is to make sure that my body is healthy enough, has enough blood in it to sustain the surgery. So right now I'm on steroids to make sure everything's just moving along. I'm getting routine, pretty much weekly at this point, weekly blood tests to see where my hemoglobin level is at. And then as soon as the hematology oncology and the gyno oncology team up and really think of a good plan, they'll let us know. So right now surgery is just kind of in the air. We know it's going to happen soon, we just don't know when. And the waiting has been the hardest part because we already have our plan, we have our decision. It's mostly just making sure I'm healthy. And it's one of those weird moments where it's like, oh, I just want to get it over with, but at the same time, I also don't want to bleed out on an operating table. That sounds pretty awful too. But it's just insane to think about that even though I always tell people when I tell what we went through that I didn't technically almost die, even though everyone tells me, no, you almost did. If you just waited just one more day, you might have. It's just crazy to me how all of this just happened. And it was by mistake, technically. It was just by happenstance. Because we went in there because my my blood level was low. They're not connected, at least from what the doctors have decided that it's not connected. They just happened to find it when they were looking at something else. Hey, wait a minute, what's that? And if they didn't catch that, if they didn't push to get that extra MRI to get that pelvic area, I would have never known because they wouldn't have been looking for it. I would have gone home and just treated this stuff and continued to have a painful period and would have never known until eventually something would have happened and then I would have found out about it later. So I know the one thing I definitely will take away from this and just really push in this video is, I know it sounds awful because I don't want to sound like a mom right now, but my ladies, get checked. Just go. If you feel like your pain is just really awful and you feel like people tell you all the time, it's not a big deal. I'll just take Advil, I'll put a heating pad, whatever. I'll just take care of it myself. Just get checked once. I know it sounds awful. Spend the money. Take a day. I don't care. Just go. Just once. And don't get just a pelvic exam. Do the whole thing. Get an ultrasound. Just if you have any problems with it. And I've seen so many BuzzFeed videos and all these other YouTube videos of people being like, oh, my pain was so awful and I ignored it and then this happened. I am now one of those people. And it sucks. Absolutely sucks. But I do not regret finding out and now taking better care of myself. I am tired of putting my job or putting money problems and money and other people, just other people in general, in front of me now, because that's what I did. I wanted this promotion so bad that I went into work with 101 fever almost, and just worked. I was throwing up. I was rolling around in an office chair because I couldn't freaking walk, all because I wanted this stupid promotion. And you know what the sad thing is? During this whole thing of me trying to get this promotion and dealing with all this medical stuff, they let me go. They fired me. They said separation, because technically they'll rehire me back when I'm well. But at this rate, I also don't know when I'm going to be well enough, or if the job is even going to be open. But they said, that was their words, not mine, that since it's so unpredictable my time off, my recovery time, things like that. Even though we know exactly how long I'm going to be in recovery for, I told them, they still said that it would just be too many absences. And since that isn't going to pretty much work for them, they fired me. And literally, like, 3-4 days after I got out of the hospital, not even really. And I get it. It's like, oh, she's a part-time employee. Why are we going to keep her if she's going to be gone for like a month and a half? Because during pretty much after the surgery, I'm going to be in the hospital for 3 days. And then I have 6 weeks of recovery. And then that's it. And then I can pretty much go back to work, see how it goes. But again, we also need to see what happens with them keeping track of the type of anemia I have. So it just kind of sucked that they were just like, we want to help you so you don't have to worry about work. We'll just not give you work by literally letting you go. And again, that was extremely corporate of them. I can't be mad. I was mad at the time. I can't be mad at them for letting me go or technically firing me. But I also hate that they were like, we're doing this for you. What? Obviously not. But thanks anyway, I guess. So it's just awful because now the only person who has a job is my husband. And we have a major surgery, so many more blood tests, and then recovery after that. And I'm just kind of like, wow, well, here we are. It's just insane this entire week. But the one thing I definitely want to say is thank you to everyone who has been supportive of my decision and just the whole thing in general. I know I kept a lot of people in the dark about this because I didn't really know if I was going to be able to pull myself out of it at the time when I found out. It was crazy. I'm still in shock that it's even happening right now. I still haven't even done the surgery yet at this point. But I feel like a better person because of it. I feel like a stronger person because of it. And again, there are definitely going to be moments, I'm not going to lie, that are probably going to be so hard and so awful. But I have a supportive family. My parents have been very for whatever decision I make. And they didn't pressure me to change what I wanted to do. They didn't sit there and go, are you sure you don't want to do? No. They literally sat there and went, whatever you decide is what we'll go with. And that was huge, because that was the one thing that I thought would suck, was that I would be their disappointment daughter who couldn't bear their grandchildren. And it was far from it. They were so supportive. And so have my friends and my in-laws and people who did know. And it's been a very interesting journey, very huge, like, look into yourself, figure yourself out journey. And again, I hate that it had to happen this way, but I'm also so glad that it did, because now I can finally start taking care of myself, finally taking time to look for either going back to my job and starting anew, if there's a job left for me when that happens, or finding a completely new career, finding something that's less stressful, something I don't have to worry about, and just doing that and finally being okay with that. You know, I was always putting it behind because I always had to find a production job. I had to become a producer or a host or whatever. I always had to be like finding the best thing for me in that career, but I don't have to do that. I could just find something that makes me finally happy and something that won't put my health at risk anymore, or put it on, at least on the back burner, because I need to stop doing that. And I have plenty of friends who probably do that too, and family. And I love you all, but it's not worth it. It's just not. And again, it sucks that I had to get to this point to figure that out, but I'm so happy I did. And it's just so great. I love it so much. It's nuts. But again, I want to thank everyone for always supporting us and always helping us out. I know that it probably seems weird because I've been so weird on the internet about it, but I'm definitely probably never going to shut up about I mean, I already don't do it now with the women's rights and everything, but like I'm definitely going to be pushing it even harder now because I know I'm still going to get those questions because they're not going to know. It's not something they can see. Well, they'll be like, oh, your husband and you like, God, your children will probably look so cute. Comments like that. And it's not their fault. It's not like they know or anything, but it's going to be rough for the next early part of my 30s. Like just thinking about just going through menopause in my 30s sounds crazy to me, but it's not going to break me down. Not this time. I'm definitely going to stand out and stand up and be strong on this one. Because again, it's not fair that we have to get this type of crap all the time. That the only way that you are a true woman is if you become a mom, technically. It's so dumb, and I hate it. So I'm happy that I can be a part of that, because there's also people who just don't want kids, or they can't have them at all because of something like this, or even worse. And you make them feel like crap because of that. That's stupid. And I've always been that type of person that will always push for that. And obviously, I love kids. I love them so freaking much. But I also know that doesn't make you less of a woman because you don't love children or you just don't have them. It's stupid. And I finally feel good about that. I just want to say, again, thank you guys so much for all your support and everything that you guys have done, and obviously sticking around through this entire video because it's a long one. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on GoFundMe, you already know all the details that are in there. If you haven't and you're watching this on Twitter or any of my other social media platforms, if you could share out, donate, or just cheer us on on the GoFundMe, we would really, really appreciate it, just because right now we need a little bit of help. And anything would help us out really, truly, and like tremendously. So again, thank you. Mwah.